Rich, would you like it to fix a typo on this form before you
Gotta be
send
kidding.
it to everybody?
I did put it in during the opening session this morning, so where is it?
No. The question where it asks, what do you check your
Okay,
email
I
on?
noticed
You're
that no
asking
one wants to sit
how
on
often do you
that
check
side
your
of the
email?
room.
I'm gonna put how do you check?
Rich, I'm stealing like a lot of your information and incorporating it into my session tomorrow.
Oh, good.
So-
Well, we're getting live data here hopefully too, so.
Great, this is,
There you go.
yeah, because one of the technologies in EDUCAUSE report is BYOD, which is
Okay.
like, why are we still talking about this, and here's why.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I've got like, here's a quote from your 2014 survey where you said 100% of students are coming in with smartphones.
yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you prepared for that? Are you using this pedagogically? Are you?
Yeah, exactly. What are you using it for?
Or did you do a 2015 survey?
Yeah.
Is that just going to be available here, or is that hiding someplace?
No, I can get, I'm trying to think if there's a copy online. I've got, no, SlideShare. I've got some on SlideShare, and we'll put this on SlideShare after.
Okay.
I haven't put it up there yet.
Thank you.
Yeah. So where was the typo again?
You found a typo?
That right there, you're asking how often do you check it, should be how do you check her?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
But I guess doing it publicly in the room doesn't resolve you of the issue.
Well, Leslie has to fill this all out now.
So there's a URL on this side. I've mentioned this once already, but if you wouldn't mind filling out this unscientific, unethical, or not, it's not ethical, but it hasn't been approved by any ethics review board. But I don't think it will cause
It's unethical?
any psychological damage or hurt feelings or anything, so.
Okay, I filled it out. You'll know which one's mine, because I tried to argue like with, so.
Okay.
I love comments.
Yeah, no, we'll, that'll be publicly available too, of course.
And you have addressed.
I know, I do that every time, it's when I quit coming every year and I forget how you all dress.
I know, right? Like, I even
I
have
dress
toothpaste
in
down my
honor
shirt.
of these last Callie. This is my funeral dress for your last Callie.
If you need a tie, Ben, Elmer has one.
I saw that, he has the tie, I got the jacket, put us together.
It's perfect.
Maybe I should
Maybe
wear
it's not
a
working.
That's true. It's
Well, it's closer to the door that everyone's coming into. I think that's probably.
Yeah, that's exactly. But you can always get on that.
Yeah, because
That might be the other.
there's a nicer view out this window. I think it's just a parking lot back there with a bit of grass. Do an informal survey of note-taking. Note-taking devices. Although they may not be taking notes, they may be.
Let's go with the baseball.
the note taking thing. I heard someone talk about it in prior.
Okay, let me ask you.
They said their faculty. Yeah, it was just they said their faculty.
Yes.
But they didn't want them
add-on?
addressing
It's
it.
the CC, wait,
Probably close to
closed caption, yeah, yeah. that's-
I don't know. I was gonna have to ask him. I'll tell you more about it afterwards. It was just came up, and I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder why there was resistance. If this person was acknowledging the need for that.
Yeah.
Well, no, they have tons
You
of.
don't do it for every single
I can see that.
Well, in this case, I think it was about.
There's index function.
I think that's what I heard. I could have been certain. I only heard.
works, no one ever wants to sit on the side of the room.
We've got a few daring individuals here, so.
And one person in the front row.
That's because I forgot my glasses at home.
Actually, mine probably the exact opposite. This is too small, I've got to get, reading glasses or.
Yeah, these days, like when you print conference materials, you have to hand it to someone over 45. Can you read this?
Pump up the font size.
I think I broke that rule.
What's that?
I think I broke that
Decided
rule.
that.
We
Oh,
covered my
really?
quotes here.
Well, I'm more interested in sort of in research like professional ethics or, publishing it for something to be able to think about.
Yeah.
Discuss.
So good afternoon, everyone. Glad you could all make it out this afternoon. My name's Rich McCue. I work at the University of Victoria in the library. I'm just finishing a master's in education, focusing on educational technology.
And I'm Will Monroe, and I work at the LSU Law Center in Baton Rouge. Rich and I have common interests in these themes because I also did a graduate program in a similar area. And we started talking a few months ago about kind of our older survey results. So,
And you should have seen our wives roll their eyes as we talked about this last night over dinner, but that's a separate story. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the trends we've seen, focusing on this past year's survey in terms of what students are bringing with them, and again, talk about some opportunities on how we can use the technology students are bringing with them to enrich their educational experience at law school. So, before I switch pages here, just so you know, on the whiteboard there's a technology survey which is very similar to the survey that we gave to our students at EBook. If you want to fill it out, you guys will fill it out in about a minute and a half, so it won't take long. The other thing, you'll notice up top there's a URL where you can ask questions, and I see someone has asked a question already.
Oh, we use that.
Why doesn't Rich have his reading glasses on? Okay. Yeah, I need them when I'm looking at my outline for the conference. But other than that, I don't use them. So feel free to use both of those. That top one will just stay up there the whole presentation. You can access the other one easily from the whiteboard there too. So the current purpose of the survey was to identify the technologies that students are bringing with them to school for use both in their personal and academic lives. And we wanted to explore ways to facilitate the educational use of those personal devices for research as well as for class-related work. The third reason we wanted to do it is so that we could identify areas in where we, especially in the library, could provide equipment for students who maybe couldn't afford it to make things a little more equitable. And fourth was to highlight and look for ways for instructors to use that technology for more engaging and hopefully more effective instruction on their part. So the original purpose of the survey back in 2003, and I think a few of you might remember that vintage of Dell laptop there, was to figure out how many students were bringing laptops with them to law school, because we were looking at potentially implementing a laptop program. So I want to know how many were bringing laptops, what year were those laptops, or how old were the laptops, were they buying a laptop specifically for law school? And also, there might be a few people, probably not too many, who might not recognize what that is there. Yes, if all of
You
us
can pick them up at the door.
Yeah. You know, how many laptops have Wi-Fi? Which we'll get to in a minute. I've got a pretty little graph showing 2003 to 2005, but you couldn't take for granted in 2003 that a student with a laptop would have Wi-Fi built in or a Wi-Fi card.
and LSU began surveys in 2008, and that was driven mostly by an interest in student laptop ownership. Do we need some kind of laptop requirement, which never materialized in the end. And we started sharing a lot of questions. I say Rich and I, EBook, there's a few others, I think Gary Moore from USC and other schools, shared questions back and forth, and we started to have a lot of guess similar questions to students, which I guess is why we wanted to talk to you today. So the questions that we asked were clustered around a few topics, relating to hardware and applications, mobile devices, email and collaboration, computing and internet, and social media. And
Yeah, so back when we first conducted the survey back in 2003, just to sort of set the scene for you a little bit, Finding Nemo was the hot movie. I had to do a little bit of Googling to find all this stuff. The cool high-tech cell phone back then was one of my favorites, the Palm Trio. And the iTunes Music Store had just been released by Apple with the company, was it a 5 gig iPod or something like that? It was a pretty small iPod. And the US forces had just been hailed as liberators in Iraq at that time, just to give everyone a bit of context. Meanwhile, among first-year law students at UVic, you can see that the laptop ownership rate was about 66%, and I've got a couple years after that, so it increased to 75, and we'll see in a minute is essentially 100% now. Only 49% of students had wireless laptops in 2003. That quickly climbed to 83 and 86% in the following years, but there was a lot of growth there. And we also asked about internet access at home because we couldn't assume that every student had high-speed internet access at home. So, 72% high-speed, 15% had dial-up, and 13% had no access at home. So we wanted to know what students had at home to, facilitate work at home in a digital format.
And did you ask for platform?
Sorry, what?
Platform, PC versus Mac?
Back then we did not because it was pretty much all PC. There were the occasional Mac, but it was few and far between at that point, which there's a radical difference now, of course. So we fast forward to 2015. Arguably, Star Wars The Force Awakens was one of the biggest movies of the year. And again, arguably the high-tech phone of the year was the iPhone 6S. At least the LSU Law students would strongly argue in favor of that. Virtual reality products were becoming more popular, and the U.S. still has 12,000 troops in Iraq along with 2 aircraft carriers. So some things change, some things don't change quite as much. So let's start by looking at cell phone ownership. And this is just smartphones versus regular phones. At LSU, it's 99.4% smartphone ownership. I think there was one person who maybe on a dare owned a flip phone or something like that.
yeah, but I think the year before it was, it was 100%.
Yeah. At UVic, it's 96%. You've got, but everyone has some sort of a cell phone, as we'll see in a second. So here's the breakdown of brand. So you've got iPhone on the left there. At LSU's in red at 84%, UVic's 56%. Android at LSU is 15%, 38% at UVic. And as a Canadian, I'm sad to say that BlackBerry is at 0% at LSU and only 3% at UVic, which represents about 9 students who, holding on to that BlackBerry before it probably is going to have to die before they get rid of it. But so smartphones are ubiquitous, not only in ownership, but also in the probability that students are going to have them with them in the classroom. And as we'll see in a little bit, that's not necessarily the case with laptops. Most students probably do bring their laptops to school, but you can't count on every single student having a laptop in class every day. So one of the things we can do with phones, because we know that pretty much everyone is going to have one, is in-class feedback. So if you're in a small seminar-sized class, the Socratic method works well, but if you've got 100 students in a lecture hall, it's not going to work quite as well if 1 out of 100 know they're going to be asked a question from the professor. But using some sort of a service like the Moodle, Moodle-based quizzes?
Yeah, so just that, why do you need a laptop requirement if everybody's got a phone? One of our faculty were just using Moodle and a quick, easy quiz feature called Choice to ask questions, prompt discussion, and it's been pretty effective for her. And this is in a class with 100 students, so there's no other way to really reach that many people. But many of you are using response devices. It's the same sort of principle at work.
They just don't have to pay for them at that point.
That's right, because
Yeah.
it's just our LMS.
Yeah. So the other thing, if you're doing group work in classes, it's an easy way for them to do quick reference, look up things, fact check. So in terms of laptops owned by students, we were just talking about this. We got OS 10 and both institutions is in the high 60%. Windows is low 30%. And if you want to know where the tech savvy law students are going to be coming from, you need look no further than the 1.5% of students, which is, you know, what, 7.5? I'm not sure how we get a half of a law student, but, you know, yeah.
Can you read the, I can't, because I don't have my.
Oh.
on. Can you read the, tell me what the
Yeah.
percentages are again on the Mac versus Windows?
So it's, at UVic, it's 63% Mac and 35% Windows and 1.5% Linux.
Okay, and where else?
And it's 68%, 32%.
Okay.
We've had Linux users in the past, just not this year.
It's a bad year for Linux.
Yes.
Actually, if you count Chromebooks, that's technically Linux underneath, but yeah. So as you might guess, laptop ownership is 100%. Everyone's got a laptop of some form between the schools. But the other question that we've alluded to is how many students actually bring their laptops with them to class. And at UVic, it's about 77% bring them on a regular, every day or on a regular basis. And 24% occasionally or never bring their laptops to school. At LSU, it's 88%, more than once a week, and 12% occasionally or never. So thinking about UVic, the 24% of students who rarely bring their laptops to class, that translates into about 90 students who are in the building on a regular basis who don't have their laptops with them. And I think that's one of the reasons why at UVic anyways, we've kept a small computer lab in the library open, just because there is a sort of a baseline of demand for those machines. For whatever reason, the students aren't bringing their laptops with them. I think at LSU, you have a lab that's closed.
We actually don't have any open labs anymore, and it's because of survey data like this and just seeing students come to school with laptops. We have maybe 3 open library PCs, but besides that, we don't feel the need to have a lab. There's maybe a small group of computers that are used for training purposes, for emergencies during exams, but they're not treated as a lab. And I guess one point from all this, the proliferation of all these devices. You need good wireless. All of you know this with students bringing 2, 3, multiple devices to your classes. Just last year we had to address some weak coverage in certain parts of our buildings, but this, again, is an advantage because it allows you to use things like the in-class applications like Turning Point or what we were referring to earlier with quizzes using Moodle Choice.
Let's see here, we got another question. Do you not have a laptop requirement?
No, we don't. We don't have a laptop requirement at LSU.
Rich, do you guys at UVic have a laptop requirement?
No, we don't. And part of that at UVic is because for Canadian student loans, they couldn't have hardware bundled into the student loans. So that wasn't the only reason, but that was a big one, just because it would be hard to mandate it and then have students that couldn't find the money to do it. As it turns out, it's a moot point now, but yeah, it's a good question though. So real-time audio and video collaboration, I won't spend a lot of time on this. Skype is the big one in the group, although I did notice in our Cali survey, it seems like Hangouts seems pretty big for us, but we'll get to that at the end if we've got time. When we ask students about collaborative document editing, UVic 61% use, and that's blue there, 61% use Google Drive and about the same use Dropbox. And that's been increasing over the years. So this is actually all UVic, showing 2012, 13, and then 15, and increasing use across pretty much all of the platforms, except for iCloud, which I think is having issues or has had issues. At LSU, in 2015, Google Drive was at 73% and Dropbox was at 46%. So I think we're seeing across the board the number of students using cloud services to do collaborative work is increasing as the tools become more capable and convenient. So, yeah.
Do you guys provide, like, our university, they have box accounts like Google Drive. Are these their own personal stuff? Is this stuff through the school?
Let you answer first, Will.
So this is our own personal stuff, pretty much, because we don't provide Google Drive or Dropbox. I guess Office 365 has, what, OneDrive?
Yeah.
But that doesn't begin for us until July 1st.
Yeah. So at UVic, our province in particular has specific privacy laws that doesn't allow us to use UVic-based cloud services because of something, what is it, the Patriot Act or, anyways. So we can't mandate that, but obviously lots of students are using it. And I dropped the slide that talked about email service providers, but about 60% of UVic law students use Gmail for their primary email. So most of the students don't really care, but the government does. So go ahead, Will.
Okay, so tablet and ebook reader ownership. We started asking about, this is data from 2015, but we started asking about it in 2012. And that was prompted by interest in digital texts and maybe making course packs available as PDF files or in other electronic formats. We were surprised, I'm still surprised to see so many iBooks users. Some students mentioned a laptop as an alternate reader device too. When we asked them if they read ebooks for pleasure, let's see, 64% yes and 36% no, and 42% had used them for research. And I think this is the slide I wanted to get to. Are you interested, do LSU students actually want to use electronic textbooks? 27% said they did. I was interested in some of the reasons why. There's a few comments up there that came from different years, but I think they get at important themes. They wanted cheaper alternatives. They didn't want to spend so much money on casebooks. Some of them mentioned having links to online and ebook options from, I guess, their LMS, from the course. But they also made a distinction between different formats, and this came up in a conversation earlier today. They wanted electronic textbooks in 2012 that were tablet ready. I guess convenient, easy to use, but the quote about being able to easily move through a book, highlight what you want, using a flexible printed text, there were complaints about that. The electronic text didn't allow that in the way they desired.
So assuming there's continued growth in tablet ownership and ebook or e-reader ownership, we should consider creating course packs in ebook as well as in paper format. Now it looked like, I think from one of the slides there at LSU, it looked like only a quarter of students would have preferred an ebook format. But I suspect if the question had been asked a little bit differently, because I think they may have assumed that all of their books would be in ebook format. But if they had the opportunity to pick and choose, you get at least 25% and maybe more who would choose the ebook format just because of their personal preferences. We should also consider training to encourage professors to purchase textbooks that are available in ebook as well as print format, just to help students who are looking for the ebook format, which in my experience in education, usually you get a bit of a discount if you use the ebook as opposed to the paper book. And we should also note that almost all open access textbooks are freely available in ebook format, including those produced by Cali and the E-Langdell initiative that they have. And using those textbooks have the added virtue of reducing the cost of education, which as a father of 2 kids in university is something that's pretty near and dear to my heart at the moment. But if you're interested in the E-Langdell initiative, I think there's at least 1, maybe 2 sessions still to come in the conference where you could find more about the E-Langdell books. So one question about note-taking produced some interesting results, and I'm sad that we didn't phrase it a little bit differently because this question was interesting, but it actually created even more questions for us. So we've got, this is all UVic, the blue is all university students at UVic, and red is law students at UVic. And you can see when we ask them what technology they use for taking notes, about 60% said pen and paper, a little more than that, 65% said laptop. Very interestingly, cell phone came in at higher than pen and paper.
How in the world is that possible?
Well, okay, now we only asked them, please check off the devices that you use at some point. So I suspect that pen and paper actually is used more than their phones, but there are a large number of students who occasionally use their cell phones for note-taking, which we'll talk about is interesting from a teaching perspective. We'll get to in a minute. And like I said, we didn't ask them how often, which was a mistake on our part. We'll correct that next year, next time around.
So the mistake we didn't make at LSU was even asking about this at all, and I wish we would have, because it's turned out to be really interesting. How many of you have heard of this, I guess it was 2015 study from Princeton and UCLA about note-taking with laptops and handwritten notes? Good. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the way the study, I guess there are 3 different interventions that they did. And what they claim in their discussion is that both groups, just the premise is that they had lectures, there were video lectures, students took notes, they used either laptops or, notebook and paper. Afterwards, there was some kind of quiz they were administered. There were factual recall questions. There were questions dealing with conceptual understanding, higher level. And what they found was that both groups did pretty well on factual recall. For example, the question they listed was approximately how many years ago did the Indus civilization exist? This is what they mean by factual recall question. When they looked at conceptual understanding, for example, how do Japan and Sweden differ in their approaches to equality within their society? Some kind of comparison and analysis is required. Handwritten groups did better. Why? Why did they do better? Another intervention that they tried was to give the laptop students specific instruction. Do not transcribe these notes. You need to summarize and you need to paraphrase. But they didn't do it, which is interesting, right?
They maybe couldn't do it.
Well, these are things we don't know. That they couldn't do it, that they did, it did not happen with those laptops. So is it that the students are processing that lecture at a more shallow level? They're not engaging with it as much when they're just transcribing and writing? I think it's an interesting question. Well, I guess the control conditions, I don't recall if they prohibited them from doing anything else. Does anyone? Because I can't remember from that.
And I'm sorry, I was talking more about general class.
Oh, well, that's a whole other kettle of fish, right? But I guess it might be interesting thinking of the 60% cell phone note-taking. Now, they're going to be challenged to do anything but summarize those notes. Would they do better? I don't know. But I took an interest in a lit review on note-taking while we were looking into this. And the general phrase I really like is that the most effective notes highlight an overall framework that embellishes that framework with critical specifics, not everything. So we'll definitely be asking about this next year. Let's see. This is a quote from 2015, and we had many comments to the same effect. Students don't appear to have handwriting skills. They complain about not being able to write quickly enough, but maybe, again, because they're trying to take that transcription behavior and act it out with, by hand. If they knew to summarize, paraphrase, or even develop some kind of a framework, a visual framework that might work. Some students complained about the fact that there were inconsistencies. Some classes they could take laptop notes, and others they had to take handwritten notes. Managing paper and digital was difficult. And others also mentioned the fact that you can't do in-class research that way. And that came up quite a few times.
Yeah. So maybe there's a need to teach students how to take more effective notes, whether that be in legal research and writing or another class. But students, it's clear from the comments, a lot of them feel passionate about being able to use their laptop to take notes, but I think most of them don't realize that it's not necessarily helping them in the recollection. I guess it's not detrimental in terms of recollection of facts, but in terms of incorporating the overall concepts and the interrelation between the concepts that are being presented. So education on that, we think, would probably be helpful for students, and letting them know that the transcription style is not in their best interest, especially if they can access class notes via the course learning management system or the PowerPoint slides. So they don't really need to transcribe every word that's spoken. So one of the ways that I've been playing with for note-taking is sketchnoting. And this builds on research from, and I'm going to massacre his name, so excuse me, Alan Alan Pavio, thank you, and his dual coding theory. So sketchnotes employ both the verbal and visual channels in the brain, in which the brain processes information through sketches and through words. So instead of writing absolutely down everything or typing it out, you pull out the key concepts and make visual representations as well as some notes in text form, and then make connections between them. And there are different ways of sketchnoting. Maybe, do you want to chip in here? Or?
Well, you do more sketchnoting than I do, but the premise is that, you know, with sketchnoting you learn a few basic visual frameworks, like some sort of radial pattern or different ways of relating concepts together visually.
Yeah.
And then you take those, some limited sketching abilities to render, you know, basic shapes, and come at it with that.
And limited will really means limited. You don't have to have much, as I'm living proof of. So here's one that I did for I was on a committee looking at a digital scholar commons for the main library on campus. And as we met and talked about different things, I was sort of sketching, and I must admit this is a second draft. I sort of prettied up because I didn't proportionally get it quite right. So, but it actually wasn't far off this first time around. It was just sort of squished on one side. But it helped me record the main points of what we were talking about, but it actually helped me sort of conceptualize better my thoughts on the issue and what the important parts of it were. And I was able to share this back with the committee, which I think was helpful for the committee, at least to get my take on what was important in the process and what the final outcomes were that would be most meaningful for the students involved. So one way that we can encourage faculty to leverage the technology that students already own and already bring with them to school would be to offer more professional development opportunities for new and for current faculty. And I think especially for the new faculty, because there is a pretty significant switching cost if you're going to move from, you know, a lecture style of teaching, for example, to something a little more interactive or using, you know, pre-class videos and exercises. Because it takes time and effort to develop those materials, but if you've got new staff or new faculty that are coming in, they still have to make that investment. So we can present this as another option for them to pursue as they begin to develop their curriculum. For example, a typical blended pedagogy allows instructors to engage in more hands-on constructivist activities in class by moving some of the lecture material into, you know, videos, readings, and exercises. And, you know, the Cali exercises are a great example of that. You know, it's not new technology. Cali lessons have been around forever, but it's another tool in the toolkit. And like we said, while we can't depend on every student having a laptop in class for individual work, you see them in large enough numbers for group work so that you can pair people together or put them in groups of 3 to work together on a project in class. So here's a real world case study from my almost finished thesis. I worked with a couple of English professors and helped them flip or move a bunch of lecture material out of the face-to-face time and into pre-class, the pre-class space on Moodle in our case. So this involved moving most of the lecture into videos and online exercises. And then in class, most of the time was spent in group activities where the students worked together. And most of the assignments helped them make progress on their major paper that was sort of the big capstone activity for the whole course. And when the groups had finished doing their work in class, they'd either share what they'd done with the rest of the class through Moodle, another online tool, or sometimes just on a piece of paper that would be posted on the wall. And here's a quote from the professor that was part of the treatment group or the flip class at the end of the semester. And this is a senior instructor with 15 to 20 years experience. He said, "My sense is that there's more consistent and higher level of student interest in the flip classes than in the traditional lectures." And coming from him is really high praise because he is a master teacher. He is very good at what he does. Another comment that I'm just paraphrasing him from what he said, the students engaging in the in-class group activities are not distracted by their personal technology. They're using it to help them learn, similar to how they learn in real world settings. Typically, and this was something that I've sort of felt but hadn't actually talked to a teacher about, he said if students are getting distracted by their technology, there's something wrong with my lecture. Basically, I need to do something different because it's not engaging enough, or the student's having maybe another problem. So next we asked about their social media usage in general. And currently, this is UVic. 87% of students use Facebook, and 73% of those students connected with other students before arriving at law school. And while a number of students commented about their general dislike for Facebook and in particular and social media in general, it's obvious that a large percentage of them use it, especially to help them connect with classmates before the semester starts. Faculty should consider assisting incoming students connect with each other by pointing them to student-run social media groups and their welcoming emails. And this can be especially helpful for out-of-town students who are looking for shared accommodation and other things of that nature. So lastly, and this is another one where we should have asked for more, but we always have next year. We asked about social media usage for help with assignment completion. And as you can see here, law school is red, the general UVic population is blue. 74% of UVic law students said that they use social media to help them complete some sort of a class assignment. And unfortunately, that is all we asked. We should have at least put a text box at the bottom for them to elaborate. But so we're going to be doing that next year. Other things came in way behind. The number 2 was I don't use social media. Number 3 was YouTube, 4 Google+, and then on down the line. Now this is a story I've told before, but I think it's a good one. I like it. And it's talking about how social media can be used effectively to really help a class. Now, my partner just finished a 4-year nursing degree, and she, in her second year, took a physiology and anatomy class where the regular teacher was off on maternity leave, and the parachuted-in teacher was a marine biologist that hadn't done any human physiology and anatomy for over a decade. And he was given a PowerPoint deck that he faithfully marched through every class. And they had readings to do before class, but they figured out eventually he was actually giving a fair number of factually incorrect answers to questions that were asked by the students. And so they complained to the dean, they complained to the biology department head, but because of budget constraints, there wasn't anything they could do. So what they ended up doing, the nursing program is cohort-based, so there are 5 cohorts that took all of their classes together for the first 2 years. And so they'd set up a Facebook group basically to organize parties and social activities. But when they had this problem in this biology class, they ended up starting to use it to share YouTube videos that explain the concepts that should have been explained in class better. So they go to YouTube, they'd find, I don't know, like something describing mitosis or whatever. Whoever found that would share that in their closed Facebook group. People who were interested would watch it. If someone didn't understand it, they'd say, hey, what's that about, cell membrane? I don't understand. Usually one of the other students who did understand would hop on and say, well, it's about this, this, and this. And they went probably 2/3 of the semester using this method to work their way through the coursework. And at the end of the semester, they had a common final exam across all 5 sections. And my partner's section got the highest average score on the common final exam. It's the correlation and causation question, I guess. He was a horrible teacher by all reports, but I suspect that the class actually put more time and effort into learning the material because they felt like they had to. And as a consequence, they did better on this final exam than the rest of them. Interestingly, I asked my wife and a couple of her friends that were in the cohort if, that was great. Did you guys, do that the next semester? They did not, because I think they didn't feel like they needed to. They felt like they had competent instructors that would sort of help lead them through the material. So they didn't do that, and they didn't put the extra time and effort in. But it's just a little vignette to show how, social media, if used properly, can really be beneficial for students in certain types of settings. Okay, so we're getting near the end here. So we've covered a lot of territory. Now let's look at some of the opportunities that we've identified based on our analysis of the data. So the first one would be to encourage the adoption of ebook formats, including open access. And I don't know if we've mentioned that, but open access doesn't mean it has to be ebook. You can get print versions of open access materials as well, but at least make materials available in ebook format wherever possible.
And student note-taking. Debbie asked a question here, and
Yeah.
it's on point with this. How can students relate sketch notes to their final outlines? I want to kind of try to answer this. That's one of the reasons they want to use their laptops. What I'd like to show the students is how to use outlining techniques in their notes and less transcribing. So, I don't...
I've done a little bit of work with it.
Yeah, so I haven't really. I'm interested in this. One of the people that I found who's done some thinking about it and writing about it is Derek Bruff from Vanderbilt. And he's gone back and done a lot of great reviews of existing note-taking studies and then tried to practice using sketch notes and other techniques like this with his students. I think really what I wanted to say here is just come to that point. There's an opportunity here. There's things to learn. Students clearly behave in certain ways with laptops that they don't when they're trying to handwrite notes. Would it be a good idea to present students with already ready to embellish kind of frameworks, visual frameworks to work out concepts? Should they make them themselves? Is that too much work? Some of the research says they shouldn't be making them themselves. They need to start with something that's already made so they can take something that's very complicated and simplify it. That's really about it. I'm fascinated by this, and I want to make sure that we ask about student note-taking in the future because it's something I hear about from a lot of our faculty.
Yeah. So again, we should seriously consider providing training to faculty members so that they can at least be aware of the different ways they can leverage student technology to make more engaging, more enriched teaching in their classroom. They may not elect to use it, but at least they've got that in their minds as an option to use. And hopefully that can, one of the things in my study that I found in the classes with ESL or English as second language students, they love having the lecture-based material out of the class because their cognitive load in class because of their lower ability to understand English, it makes it very advantageous for them to be able to read text or watch video multiple times, look up words, whereas in a lecture setting when the teacher's using lovely metaphors that are great for English speakers but hard to understand for someone who's not a native English speaker, it makes it easier for them to come to class closer to the same level of preparedness as other students. And that's what I mean by differentiated learning. Help students hopefully get to the same level so that in the in-class activities they can work together to really solidify that knowledge that they've been working to create in their own minds. But we've got to remember, and I'm someone who's been guilty of this in the past, that technology is not a cure-all for everything in education. However, if the technology is being used to increase student engagement, both in and out of class, then I think we're on the right path. So
there's another question here
go ahead.
from Osek. I may have missed it for a sec due to a brief work issue, but did you have questions or has there been thought about adding questions on students' proficiency of applications, such as Word, Excel, and Acrobat? Would help some of the issues addressed in Deb's prior presentation. So we don't ask about that, and it makes sense. How would you go about gauging that? You could do self-assessment. One of the things that came up in that presentation was that they don't know what they don't know. So if they think that they're highly competent in Word, that might not be enough. You might need to provide some other metric there, for sure.
Actually, some questions, for example, the data backup question, I specifically asked for educational purposes.
Pushing.
Yeah. Oh, another question?
No, you're pushing information to them. You're using your
Yeah,
survey to educate.
exactly. Like, I am not backing up. Maybe I should think about backing up. I also used to ask about typing words per minute. Not sure why I did, but I did.
Oh, yeah. I've thought about surveying the students too about their tech skills. Just something similar. The question, of course, is how long I'm going to hold their attention to get things, really specific things like, do you know how to use a filter in Excel, or can you do but I just didn't think that they would sit through a survey like this.
Yeah. Actually, that brings up a great point. Someone asked me earlier how, what sort of response rate we get for the survey. And Will and I have similar methods, slightly different, but similar. We have captive audiences for the most part. So in our case, we get the incoming first-year students and their orientation in the library. They're sitting in the computer lab, computers in front of them. And we give them the orientation, and we say, we're trying to help improve our services. Could you fill out the survey for us so we can understand what technology you're... So we get 98, 99% response rate.
Yeah, we get 100% response because it's their first day of their legal research class. They all completed right then.
Which is nice in that you're getting an accurate picture, and if you're trying to do a little bit of education in there, like in the case of backup, everyone's getting it pretty much.
We have another question here. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you try to do one at the end when they graduate to see if there's any change?
No, but that would be very interesting, right? What have you learned? How are you? What's changed? I mean, especially on the area of like competencies and proficiency.
Yeah. At UVic, we've rolled out this survey across the whole campus, so that's been one interesting thing to look at the law faculty compared to the overall university population.
Yeah.
And it's actually not that different. There are a few differences, but like for example, you compare law to engineering, there's a lot more Linux, not a huge amount, but more Windows and Linux and less Macs in engineering, whereas business and law have the most Macs, even more than the fine arts people. Interesting. Who knew?
One more question from Ben about students. Have you noticed students using tools like OneNote or Evernote? Or do they mostly take notes in Word? So we don't survey about that, but I do see a lot of OneNote use. I don't know about Evernote.
I've seen just anecdotally a little bit of Google Docs for collaborative notes so that they can in real time feed in, but I don't know how widespread that is. I just literally walked by someone and said, "Oh, what are you doing here?"
I think we've answered all of those. Do you have, oh, sorry.
So earlier you surveyed how many people brought laptops and you're near 100%. So you say you don't have any labs or open space use computers for the students.
We do not.
How did the students take that? Last fall semester I had 86% of the students use our lab. I had 91% in the fall, 86% in the spring. And we're at near 100% as well. I'm just kind of curious on how that went over.
I never heard anything about it. Now I remember when it happened, I guess we had students that wanted lots of power. They wanted power for their laptops. That was a bigger complaint. Maybe there were a few complaints about some wireless in certain corners of the building. Those two things were student issues. The labs were not.
At UVic, we've still got our lab. It's got 32 seats in it, and 4 years ago, just because of lower usage rates, when we refreshed it, we dropped the back row of 8 and went to 24, which, given the usage of it, didn't cause any problems. But so the back row, if there's a class in there, people in the back row typically just have their own laptops to use.
One of the things we started doing at Emory, and I'm sure I'm copying somebody else here, is reducing the number of computers in the labs, but adding large monitors.
Yeah.
And that's been an enormous hit. They're perfectly willing to pull out their laptop and plug it in if they can get a big monitor.
So we have a lot of times where it's both. They actually are logged into their computer and our computer at the same time, and they're using both at the same time. So, and we added a few stations this year where it's just monitors. They can look at laptops stuff too as well. Yeah, I mean, it is, in our library, it's certainly the largest used area of our library is our computer labs.
How have those external monitors been used in your...
Pretty well. I mean, I wasn't sure. I had some students asking about it. So we put 3 of them in last year. I've got connectors for just all tied in. The monitors hold all the connectors, and they have cables tied together going, and they can whichever one they need. And it, sometimes I have them lifted up high, so it's above, a monitor on top of another monitor, sometimes side to side. But it's gotten quite a bit of usage.
Yeah.
Holly, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think sometimes the students like just to zoom in, go to a computer, do what they need to do and get out, rather than unpad, you know, turn on, connect. You know, you see something like that. And then also I've seen them, they wanna talk with each other. So they have computer lab, they can probably go in and chit chat a little bit more than out in the middle of the, you know, library. So the collaboration, I think, is, and especially, yeah, we're talking about the external monitors, they can see that type of stuff. And we're also gonna put in some Macs, and so we've never had Macs before.
So that's one thing that most, you know, again, are 70%, near 70% are Mac users, but the Mac users don't seem to care to go to a Windows machine. They'll do that. A Windows user won't go to a Mac machine.
Well, that's gonna be interesting to see,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens, yeah.
So some of the issues though are like social in nature and having large displays. And we have some large displays in some smaller study rooms that students really like to use. Those are always in use. And we've got some social spaces too. I mean, like our first 2 floors are, you can talk as much as you want. Upper floors are very quiet, and that's enforced. I don't know.
I was gonna say, we put in 3 large iMacs, the 27-inch iMacs, and we were worried that they would be co-opted by just a very small group of students. And so we put them in standing desks with no chairs or stools anywhere near. And they still get tons of use, and people like the change, they like the difference. And so then we put just large monitors on standing desks. Again, it went over very well.
I just wanted to share our experience at Fordham Law. So we just got a new building, a new library, and we put a computer lab in, not thinking that it would get much use, and it gets a lot of use. That nice woman over there said, students do seem to want to, like, they just need to print a document very quickly. They'll go onto their Gmail account, and we're forced to use Gmail at Fordham. So Google Docs and all that, that's all part of our workflows now. They'll go into either the lab or public access PCs that I have set up for people to use in the library, and they'll just print using our Faro system.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to suggest, if you want to be a hit with your students in your library, you can make available iPhone, Android, and Apple computer chargers available for being lent out. And also we have these adjustable standing desks that are pretty inexpensive, and they're turning out to be a big hit.
Yeah. You can check out standing desks.
It's a desktop thing that you can adjust, and students will use it. I don't know, just sitting.
Yeah.
At Maine Law, we did away with our computer lab years ago. We have a laptop requirement policy, and it's based on the federal financial aid they can apply for.
Mm-hmm.
Required. I only maintain 2 Macs in the lab. I find many students don't sit there to work. They dig out their laptops and sit throughout the building, but they do walk up to our public access machines to print. Because every student is standing in line at the public access machine to send a print.
Yeah.
Because it's easier than logging. Get any pushback from the students when we.
Yeah, and the whole truth may be too that there is a PC at the print desk. Students don't generally walk up to it, but they could. And we have 3 public kiosk machines. You can print from those, but there's no lab, so.
And our old.
Students can't print from their own laptop?
Oh, no, they can. And they do. They print from home.
Right.
And they come in again.
Oh, okay.
And they use our lab now for their own workspace, so that room is still theirs, it still has all the desks in it, we'll use it as a teaching location as well now, but the students will congregate in there with their own laptops and treat it like a computer lab.
Yeah.
Well, great. If there's no other comments or questions, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Actually, I'll put up the results of the survey here for anyone who's interested in. The resolution of this screen is just phenomenal, but it'll make it really small, unfortunately, for you guys.
Are you going to put a link to your slides on the
I will.
Okay.
That'll be first order of business after this session. So it looks like iPhone's in the lead. It's, what, 65%? Yeah. Ooh, a lot of iPad owners there. 88% own an iPad. Some comments.
You know, I don't know that we asked you all about this. How many of you are surveying your students right now? I mean, do you survey just your first years? Is it stuff like this? Ownership and use? Anything else?
So,
I'm sorry, I don't want to keep it everyone, but if you want to come up and talk about it afterwards, I'd love to hear what you're doing.
I'm happy to share. So right now we're going through a big website redesign. So we did in-person interviews. I developed a protocol, and we surveyed all of the main stakeholder groups that we have. So faculty, staff, library reference people, and then groups from 1L, 2L, journal members, editors, all of that. And yeah, so we didn't do so much. I wasn't so worried about like, are you using PC or Mac, but it was more like, how do you do research and how do you use the website? And almost, I think we might have had one person, like one 1L, who said that they would even use a mobile device to do some sort of legal research. None of them did. They all use their laptop just because what they told us was that that kind of work does not lend itself to mobile platforms. What they would use mobile for is like checking our hours or looking up contact info or maybe doing chat reference.
Mm-hmm.
A whole bunch of other things I asked them about, I can be happy to share.
Yeah, that'd be great to see. And to share our questions too.
Yeah.
Most of ours are aligned, but there's a few we just develop our own institution, our own use. So.
The one thing that did come to my mind when I was listening to your talk, though, was since we were doing in-person interviews with largely open-ended questions, we were able to really explore the answers that students had. So, and that varied depending on who was actually doing the interview, but and we recorded all of our interviews too to go back and
transcribe. Looks like 42% of people have notification turned on the email for their phones, which would be crazy for me to do at least. Google Drive, it's a top collaborative document editor with Dropbox coming in second. Skype is number one with Google Hangouts a close second. FaceTime at 50%. 7.7% do not own a laptop, and 50% have a laptop between 1 and 3 years. Got Mac at 52%, and Windows is everything else. I don't think there's any Linux. You didn't fill out the survey, Will. So 38% bring their laptop almost every day, and 35% occasionally, and 27% never. In terms of activities on tablets, 87% browse the web, 42% read eBooks. What's this? 45% access campus resources, 29% library resources, and 50% other work activities.
Do you have any graphs about trends, specifically platforms, or do you just have a general sense?
At UVic, I haven't put together a graph, but it's been gradually, Mac has been gradually building. And is that about the same for?
It's the same.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, so there are only 3 of us in the IT department, and we help each student that comes by to install Office 365 and the printing software and exam software. Of the 35 to 40 students that I helped last year, we had new Macs, and it was their first Mac, which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to me, maybe it's because we're getting so web-based, it doesn't matter.
browser.
Exam software is dual platform, so that doesn't matter?
Yeah, just exam software that I think is the major thing holding people back from like a Chromebook even. Yeah. So for note-taking, 65% pen and paper, 61% laptops, 50% tablet, and 35% smartphone. And again, I made the same mistake and didn't let people say what percentage they use them. 88% back up their files, which is good to hear. So that's my public service announcement for the day. If you're part of that 11 or 12%, please back up. Most people are using the cloud. What's that one? Hard drive backup? Yeah, and 60% external hard drive. Facebook is #1 for social media at 88, with Twitter at 72. That's way higher than students, by the way. LinkedIn at 68, YouTube 44. Oh, we got 3 Snapchat users. I've installed it just because I felt like I had to, because my kids are using it, but it's baffling. Like the user interface is just horrible. Yeah.
I had a question. I may have missed it. You may have already answered it, but there was a question on the Google slide about eBooks and taking online exams with an eBook. Like if they're locked into an exam environment and it's an open book test, how does that work? Do you allow in an e-reader, but then technically they have access and they can do like searches for keyword searches, which gives them an advantage?
No, we're not. I could be wrong, but I don't think we're allowing that right now. I think there's some products that will let you do that. Ben, what?
ExamSoft
Yeah.
claims that they can do that. There are other products that don't allow you to do that, and it is a challenge.
Starting to come up where we are, Michael. It's been asked by a couple of faculty who have assigned eBooks as the primary textbook for the class when it rolls around to exam time. By default, we're an ExamSoft school. Used to be EBooks, also highly recommended, Chris. So plug for you there, buddy. But with ExamSoft, I know that one of the by default, we set up all our exam templates as blocked, meaning they can't access any other program. But you can do NBI, I think, which strangely it's not blocked internet, which means they can use other programs but not the internet. So if the e-reader were just a piece of software on that student's laptop, then purportedly they could open that up just as they could open up Word and use their electronic outlines, but they just couldn't get out on the internet and copy and paste stuff from the open web.
And I believe also that they don't allow cut and paste.
You can't cut and paste from external sources, right? So even if you're using, the eBook or Word to use your outline as an electronic reference, you can't copy into the exam template. That's correct.
They actually have, I think, an ebook product that they'll sell you the casebook and questions and assessments. So they probably will it would probably work into that framework.
And Chris, if I recall, EBB is the same way. Like, can't you set up a certain template so that you can't allow access to other programs?
What type of, I was interested in finding out what the group was like today. So we've got 15% instructors, 54% IT support, 20% library support people, and 11% other. And that's it. But again, I'll post links to both the slides and to the survey so you can dig into it if you want within the next 2 hours, let's say. But thank you very much.
Thanks again for coming. These beautiful rendered surveys from a few years ago. I remember this is why I think I even this is really comfortable in 2012 about this because I really like the way you do this blog posts.
Yeah.
These are cool.
I wanted that stat about the Mac versus laptop because I have it in our session on and I couldn't find it specific, but I was guessing we're at 65-ish%.
No idea, John. This is where I'm kind of wrapping things
approaching 0. Yeah.
I didn't talk about it when I started the other big things that built on that last year.
Thank you. See you later. I'll be in the shop.
That'd be great, so then you can like fill in all this language, like, well, I think multiple pages, no, it's really being done this way.
You know,
It's really, it's really science.
we actually did that as well. And when we rolled this out across the thing was we could already see it. So unfortunately, I wasn't the person who had to wade through all of those bonus, but they were basically just coding comments even after the fact. So there's, 80 Wi-Fi, and should break it down because to read through them all. Yeah, and that's almost identical to that. So it's not bad. It's a quarter of the cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I gave a very similar presentation to this to the Campus Learning and Technology Committee, and they spent probably about a fifth of the time talking about intellectual property and recording, surreptitious recording. Hey, we'll get out of your way here. Yeah, it's going on. Some people are just
probably need to plug it in just in case. This thing sometimes.
We actually asked about
it's nestled nicely into the thing that we have talked about. Research class, the first year, doesn't really go into teaching time too much. No one else has to. But that's a shame, right? Because then if we're more officially sanctioned, that makes it
master's thesis I did as well, so it was quantitative.
Not if I have to. Is there any reason for me to use it?
Oh no, I would just need to put a special background for the recording.
Oh, okay.
I think you caps on this.
So the whole thing is being recorded.
You can slow it down, they can review it at all times. Yeah, if you're in the lecture hall and you're not recording, it's a one-shot deal. Thank you guys very much.
That's as much as we have. That's it. Oh, it's already in there. So we just go to the beginning of your slide?
Yeah, feel free to. This is my personal, it doesn't matter. So that's the beginning of the slide.
So we go to slideshow. And presenter view. Oh, it's right there.
Use yours. Both of them you guys were using yours. Okay.
Now, if I wanted to use this to point,
You can, it has a laser pointer, but you can't use it to advance because it's only meant for this computer.
okay,
So if
but
you,
I can use the laser pointer.
yeah, you just hit this button. So.
Okay, so,
Well, I was gonna say, I thought, picked up.
so my notes, it looks good, yeah. So if I want to make it larger, I think it's larger now. but-
Yeah, you can make it larger or make it smaller, but then you got to scroll up and down on it.
Yeah, so, okay,
You can make this one smaller so you can make the notes bigger.
this one's smaller?
Yeah, there's a line right in between this one and this one.
Okay, so this is really showing me that this is the next slide.
Yeah,
So now all I need is the first.
scroll down. There it is. There's that line. A little bit down. Right there you go.
Yeah, I think. And if I want to skip a slide, if I want to skip a slide, I can just go there separately from here.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you still planning on showing that video?
Yeah.
In that case, let's have that video ready to go.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure that they.
It's on your last slide. Oh, I'll let you.
No, you can. You're not gonna hurt it.
Thinking about what he's gonna wear.
So let's just put this.
I think it has to be in
Oh yes.
in this mode.
Well, the Elvis is when it started.
So I can click on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless I think of something really good.
Okay.
Oh, it's Albert with Bob. See,
Let me check your wireless. Yeah, you're on.
Because I saw Albert please with the ball behind me. But then when he did it, you couldn't see it. And then I couldn't hear what you guys were going back.
Oh, you lost internet.
Yeah.
You do the intro. You have seen Rangers the last time.
Yeah. And that's why I knew the ball was going to do something.
I didn't see the ball until after. Yeah, that makes sense, because I've seen the movie.
Well, and that's where you needed to have the video, you know, camera, and then on the screen up front.
Well, I was wondering how you find out what she does.
Yeah.
Do something in Monroe, but
Process the questions we
everything's got a rule. Atlanta.
We should do it in the building though, it's restricted airspace.
Well, I think there's further rules in the university about
I saw one on our campus, or I saw the drone down there on our campus. I assume it would have been up there, and that made me say, I'm a little nervous driving this drone around.
Do I get out and try to come back in?
It's having internet issues. What I can do is I can load it up here. So the only thing you'll have to do is hit PC and then play the video.
What about the video?
Hold on.
Deb? Yeah, we're gonna go.
Let me see what's going on with the network.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. So if I finish here, then I can play it here. That's good too.
Yeah, I'd rather everything's working though, because I'm trying to make sure you don't have issues. Something's going wrong.
Worked for us before.
Surprisingly well now.
It's working.
It's only been for short stretches, because right now it's, I shouldn't say that. Had about 10 people.
Let's see. Oop, wrong computer.
it says Wi-Fi off.
Yeah, I just turned it off. I was gonna check something.
It'll allow the students demo to do their weekly assignment.
And then the LRW.
File folder, which will be shared with the faculty member. The share file has a way that you can get a notification if the file's been uploaded or downloaded, so we can take the out of the picture. Interface. What makes Sony think it's worth $800? That just the experience writing with the pen is better than Surface, better than.
Markup, like another layer.
Okay, it's fixed.
Not at this point. Put up on your computer. Right, and it saves it automatically, so there's no.
Oh, good.
It's ready.
So, oh,
There's a button that you can program. I programmed it to be the eraser so you can write, you can erase. Names if the faculty member.
Okay.
so we leave it running at the background.
Yeah, so basically once you get to this slide and you're ready, just end your show
Okay.
and then that video is ready and just hit play and make it full screen.
Okay. Okay.
Started, of course.
To show them.
Yep.
The stack of papers, because she taught one in class.
Ready to go?
Okay, let's see again. Make sure that everything. Okay, make it full screen here.
Oh, I wouldn't make it full screen because it'll make it hard for you to get to that video then.
Well, I mean,
The presenter view?
the presenter view.
Oh yeah, this is. Oh, it's right here. Presenter view.
So, what I wanted to do, I write it.
Yep, it's showing.
Okay.
Anything else?
Okay. No, I think you've done well.
Okay.
And this works.
Yep, the top one.
Okay, my friend. Thank you.
Also,
Check on you once in a while.
also, try to talk to me at mic, or if this is picking up, the recording is picking up.
Oh,
So if it's, let me adjust this level a little bit.
yeah, make it a little bit loud because it wasn't, I mean,
Yeah, it's
I think I talked loud enough. Okay, good.
It's mainly for the recording, but we don't want it too loud because then there'll be a feedback.
Yes. And then, and it's gonna play the video will be loud. so-
Yes.
Okay.
And if you want to adjust the video volume, we can just do it right here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So you take note, I mean, it's an endless, and so what you do in it, as soon as you take them, you can share them. Now, it doesn't have to be built in, so you have to use your phone or your laptop to get it off your cloud and